Kasey, let's talk about the USC defensive line. We've previewed this a little bit in previous weeks because I'm going to speak for both of us here. We think it's going to be a fantastic group, arguably even the best on the team.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. I mean, you have a group of experienced guys who have been under D'Anton Lynn's system now for a season. And I believe USC last season only had 15 sacks or 21 sacks as a group.
Sounds right. It wasn't that much. It was we've talked about quarterback pressure and stopping the run before.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, it was pretty dry. Like, there were certain games where USC was barely pressuring the quarterback. I think you could even look at that Michigan game where USC is playing against, Alex Orji. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty bad. But now you have a group of guys, and just to throw out some names, guys like Anthony Lucas. He was a physical monster last season. And unfortunately, the USC D-line dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I mean, the whole defense did. But Anthony Lucas was a big part of that. They bring in Keyshawn Silver, transfer. You have Jamal Jarrett you could work into there. You have Devin Tompkins, Cam Fountain, who's going to take a big leap probably. He's earned the playing time. And then even like Braylon Shelby. I believe he had a sack in the Texas A&M game. He, of course, has a lot of size, just a very smart player. It's a really good group of D linemen that you have depth in as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic group. I very much think that the depth is their biggest strength because, last year, Anthony Lucas was having a fantastic season early on, obviously goes down with that injury, and you see a lot less pressure on the defensive line. I'll even throw in Bear Alexander, obviously sitting out the rest of the year. They got significantly less pressure. They stopped filling those holes a lot less. You got guys now behind Anthony Lucas, Jakeem Stewart, the 5-star. And on the other side, obviously you mentioned Cameron Fountain. He was fantastic and is a true freshman. Easily, I would argue definitely top 100, I'd say arguably top 50 freshman season in college football last year. He was fantastic. I think this defensive line is going to be phenomenal, and that's just on the outside. Working on the inside, I mentioned Bear Alexander. Once he went out, USC had a real problem of depth at that just nose tackle, that filling the gaps position. Now you have Jaw Jarrett and Keyshawn Silver, two big dudes, who are basically two of us. So I think that is how you take that next step in the Big Ten. That's how you finally start really plugging those holes. Because, obviously at UCLA, D'Anton Lynn's run defense was phenomenal. It was the best aspect of the defense. Obviously last year at USC, it was fine. It was much better than 2023 and 2022, but it was still just fine. I think this is the year they really take that leap, and they're phenomenal.
Yeah, and you got to remember, too, like Eric Henderson and D'Anton Lynn didn't really have like a full year to kind of work with these guys, especially when you have injuries as well. And so you bring in, a couple of solid guys. I mean, you could throw in, you mentioned the true freshman, Jakeem Stewart. You also have Cass Jacobson, who's going to be a true freshman. I know he probably won't play much, but you also have a handful of redshirt freshmen as well, Carlton Jones, Elijah Newby. And I think just having a coach like D'Anton Lynn, who is so focused on pressure and making the defense better. I mean, we saw him do it at UCLA. And I think having that now elevated for, a full season, now you're going on the second one, especially with Eric Henderson. And he clearly, he coached Aaron Donald. He's a guy that players love to play for.
Sorry. Yeah. Did you see a picture of Aaron Donald and Jakeem Stewart the other day?
I did. I was sick.
Love it. I love it. I mean, it's just showing it's who you can get with your recruits. It's who these coaches can get with the players. You're learning from the best of the best. I would argue Aaron Donald, best defensive lineman of our generation in the NFL, pretty easily, right?
Best defensive player of all time, I'd say maybe in the NFL.
That's maybe a bold statement. I don't know. Lawrence Taylor thrown in there. But anyways, it's just showing that you want to come here. You want to play for these guys. Look who I've coached in the league. Look at all this stuff. This defensive line is going to be fantastic. And with that being said, Kasey, I want to ask you, where do you think they stack up amongst the rest of the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, I'd say at least a month ago at this point. Oregon has a good D-line. I think easily, though, USC is in the top 4, top 3. I don't know. Do you agree with that off the bat?
Yeah, I probably would. I mean, I feel like you got to put – obviously, Ohio State and Michigan lost a lot of their top guys. Obviously, Mason Graham, Tyleik Williams, Kenneth Grant, all those guys. you still probably would put at least Ohio State above USC, and I'll put Oregon too. You know, they also lost guys like Derek Harmon, but still got Mateo Uilongile. I would put them third. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair.
On the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you combine that with, I mean, we've talked about the offense being easily top 3, top 4, you know, in that range. I mean, so does that mean, you know, I guess like when you put it all together, where do you see, I know it's more of a big picture question, but like, do you think,
are you going to ask me where do I see USC as in the Big Ten?
No, well, no. I think my question is, do you think my actual question is, do you think the D line being improved from last year to now gives USC the edge to, you know, because USC's offense wasn't really the issue last year. You know, it was obviously the injuries on defense, and there was some,
it wasn't fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
though.
The O line was the issue.
Yeah,
but like play skill wise, like no issue at all. I'd say. I mean, obviously, Miller Moss playing most of the first part of the season, and that didn't work out. Do you think the D line being this good gives USC enough to, you know, make a CFP bid? Is my question.
Ooh, a CFP bid, because we'll say 10-2 gets them in. How about that? Do you think 10-2 gets them in?
I think it does.
Yeah. 10-2 loss to Oregon, Notre Dame. That's what I'll say, and I think that's very much on the table. I would say yes, because I'm just looking at the schedule. Physicality wise, I think the only offensive lines that stack up with this USC defensive line, I'll throw 3 in here, actually. I was going to say 2, but Michigan, Notre Dame, and Oregon. I think those are the only 3 that can stack up physicality-wise against this USC defensive line. So if you're looking at that, that's at least 10, I'd say 9 to 10 games where you have a better defensive line than the opposing team has offensive line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to see, obviously we've talked about it a lot. The QB pressure last year was terrible. It wasn't good. They could not get to the quarterback. And, you know, injury was a lot of that. We've talked about Eric Gentry, obviously Anthony Lucas earlier. Lots of problems injury-wise, and just other things are attributed to, you know, them falling down, them not getting that pressure on the quarterback. Now you have that depth. You have more experience. You know, obviously we talked about Cameron Fountain. He was getting a lot of snaps as a true freshman. 2 years under his belt now. I think this is where we see him break out.
100%. I mean, physicality is a huge part of it. And you mentioned some of these guys are really huge. Like Anthony Lucas is just a huge guy. Yeah, wrong Anthony. Anthony Lucas is just a huge guy. I mean, he's a freak of nature. Can overpower offensive lines. And so, I think on one hand, you know, before we saw USC recruiting guys who maybe looked good on paper, you know, like a Bear Alexander, who is a physical threat, but the pure strength of some of these guys they have is so much better than a guy like that. And so I think that's huge. You also lose, I'm blanking on his name. Forget it. I was what's that?
Gavin Meyer?
Gavin Meyer. Sorry.
Okay,
yeah, Gavin Meyer. And he dealt with injuries last year, but I thought he was very good when he was on the field. But I think that who they've been able to supplement has been huge. And I think, you know, I really like the approach of the D-line, because you're not necessarily bringing in 5 transfers, but you're bringing in guys who, you know, you recruited a couple years ago in some cases and have worked and developed under the program. Now, granted, it's only been 1 year under Eric Henderson, but if we looked at that projected D-line, Cameron Fountain's only going to be a junior. Devin Tompkins, you know, has.
I was going to say, we haven't even mentioned Devin Tompkins. He is primed for a breakout year. I don't know if you've seen some of the video from practice. He looks fantastic.
Yeah, he does. You add in Keyshawn Silver, who is a transfer but has a lot of experience. So the point is, I mean, yes, not all these guys have played a lot of years under Eric Henderson, because he's only been at USC only one season. Same with D'Anton Lynn, but those coaches have the experience to bring those guys to their pinnacle. And again, I think we could see this. We could say the same thing about the offensive line. There's only a couple of transfers on that, and chemistry is a big part of that, and developing a line with those guys. And so I think the trenches are overall
the trenches is where football is made.
Yeah. And especially considering that USC has had really good running back play, at least all of our tenure at USC. I mean, whether or not they're underutilized or not. And so we know that USC, they're a West Coast offense, passing friendly team, but the trenches are huge for this team, especially in a Big Ten conference that's so physical. And we're going to see how that shapes out with the D-line in particular, because USC has not been touted very positively for its defense, rightfully, the past couple of years. But the culture is changing. I mean, the culture has changed in recruiting. It's changed, I feel like, with the identity of this team, and defensively with the whole new coaching staff from last season, having a year under their belts in the Big Ten, and now trying to make that jump to the CFP.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I mean, this whole shift towards more physicality and more focus on the trenches, it's important for playing in the Big Ten. It's a completely different conference from the Pac-12. Obviously, we both grew up on Pac-12 football where, it's 11:30 p.m. and these teams are running and gunning, and it's a 50-50 game. It's awesome, but it's not the Big Ten. It's different. It's not. That's what USC was in the Pac-12. They can't be that in the Big Ten. They just can't. So this focus on the defensive line, this focus on the trenches is going to be so key just going